Um, First of all, I'll just tell you that I am a creative arts therapist. My background before studying creative arts therapy is as an artist. So a visual artist, which I've been for a very long time and continue to be. While I was, I guess as soon as I really graduated with my master's, I started working with refugee children. There was a huge lack of anyone who could provide service for these young people who were known by numbers in Australia. They weren't known by their names. They were officially in community detention, where they'd be travelled to school and they'd be taken home again at the end of the school day. And but they went straight into a school, off a boat, and straight into a school. And, you know, after the most traumatising, forget the background of the country they left, but the traumatising boat journey was, So later I worked with youth, refugee youth, and it was in particular working with the youth that I started to think I need more than visual arts. I need to, really learn more about the body. I needed to strengthen my own practice with voice and with, how I could move in a space and have that sort of confidence, so I had it as a resource for the young people I was working with. Did I turn it off? No. Okay. We need an expert, please. While we're doing that, this was an 8-week pilot drama therapy program that I did in a school in Brisbane for young refugee people between 12 and 15, and they were identified by the school and by an organisation called... I'm sure I'm pressing the right button. Okay. So, young refugees, 12 to 15, it was a really diverse group. So, some of them were Sudan, Iraq, Iran. We had the new wave of Syrian refugees, but we were still getting some from Myanmar in Australia. They were in an English learning school within a school, where they would be assessed and accelerated and then transitioned to a high school. Drama therapy was used as a base for promoting and strengthening their well-being, meaningfulness, connections, engagement and life skills. They were divided into gender groups, surprise, for cultural reasons, for age appropriateness, and in the light of the movement and action that you have in drama therapy. Lots of potential to bump into other bodies. There's a rationale, you can read that later, but that's done in conjunction with the school and also the Multicultural Development Association. So I worked with a social worker from there who was already a presence in the school. She attended all the sessions with the young people and was there as witness. The program included drama games, group work, improvisation, ritual drama, play, embodied action, breath work, mindfulness, all based on the rationale. And to introduce the program to a group of young people with English as a second language, I provided a taster session so that they knew what the body of the core of the work was, and then they were invited to participate in the program. There's a risk assessment. You can read that later in your own time. Why drama therapy? Well, I've spoken a bit about that, but in my experience working with young young people with these trauma backgrounds. I met so many who were disengaged, disassociated, numb, or with persistent escalated nervous systems, and that's what led me to go work with my own body. How was I going to give voice, play, roar, practice and pretend? So that's, yes, I need to be able to do that for them to be able to do that. Oh, I've done it again. Me and buttons. Okay. There was a formal outline, which was, you can read that later. No. Safety and resilience, safety and inclusion, building connections, meet emotions, hope and bravery, positive past, and building strengths. Group agreements were made with each group, and it was in the students' own voices, so limited at the beginning. The agreement was very different between the two gender groups, mainly due to differences in the regulated state of the two groups, capacity to focus, and the level of English comprehension at the time. So this is, I'm going to go girls, boys, girls, boys, girls, boys. So this is with the girls. An opportunity arose to ask how the group would manage personal content. They're invited to sort of sit around a whiteboard and then formed a group agreement in the first session with 6 points. Not everyone contributed, but everyone was encouraged to. This was, again, in their own voices, but so that it could be presented for future sessions. Boys, the opportunity to discuss something not safe happened in the group. Ideally, a group would form an agreement, but readiness to identify their own needs was very challenging for this group of boys, so identifying group needs was not yet possible. But we had to pause for practical and safety reasons as boys were being unsafe in their behaviour and physicality. So the group was invited to sit around and to discuss how we'll manage safety. They voiced some things that were not safe to do, and they contributed as they could. Time and attention for the group was difficult, but outcomes, they still had outcomes in their own voices. And that's the two agreements, girls' agreement and boys' agreement. In the boys there, you see half a bracket where it's no fighting, no bullying. They were singular words on the board. So I've kind of just added that in for our understanding. One interesting thing I thought there on the boys was in the discussion it came up that they were taking the bad language from each other's languages and throwing that at each other. So that was raised by them, and they decided that no bad words, especially in somebody else's language. And they adhered to that because it was theirs, not mine. Okay, some intended outcomes included increased ability to self-represent individual needs and interests, increase their self-confidence, and their ability to value and trust their own values, beliefs and motivations. This is a group of people strongly swayed by local peer groups, trying to fit in the mainstream. We're also looking for an increased sense of belonging to the school, reflected through strengthening relationships, friendships formed, hopefully the wider school community. There was continual assessment right through the program, which was observation, ongoing evaluation, feedback, modification, reflection, and that was implemented every session in a form of mapping. So I began with a session plan. There was direct observation from me. There was contributions from the participants. There was input from the observer witness. And that was recorded our discussion at the end of every session was recorded and captured. There were mid and end reviews, which revealed the highs and lows of the student needs, how they were met, and there were some delightful and some sobering outcomes along the way. So I've got questions here. I don't have answers, so I've got questions. So I begin with the qualitative. You know, these are small groups, and I'm facilitating, leading at exactly the same time as observing, but there's a witness, thank goodness, to also observe, and there's the content emergent from the young people themselves. But I've got questions around what is measurable, you know, what's measurable and reliable in this kind of work. Are there areas that can be standardised and validated? Rigour is a qualitative term, which is, you know, the rigour is the richness or depth of the inquiry. A lot of qualitative work is observational by interview, and but then we've got what's phenomenological, what's happening in the experience, and emergent. So there's questions there for methodology, you know, in this kind of work. So I've put this question into some little boxes and just had a look at, you know, what can I do? Well, first of all, I could compare expected outcomes to actual outcomes. That's a fairly, you know, this is what we set out to do, did we get there? And I sort of just mapped a little bit how that could be done. Somatic evidence. What is the body showing us? You know, what's the energy level, the time taken to settle, participation level, the capacity to engage and contribute, the placement of a body in space. So here's the group over here. So you've got proximity values. One could look at the groups over there and somebody's over here. You know. What else is measurable? Physiological evidence. What else is the body showing us? Breath, face colour, motion, stillness, physicality and action, affect, and mood. All observable, measurable. Relational evidence. What relational evidence can we gather? Interpersonal, interactive, levels of trust, levels of engagement again, but respect for self and other. And finally, content. What's demonstrated? What's come out? What's emerged? What have they said? Are there, you know, is there meaning making? Have we got art products? The highs and lows, subjective data. This is a phenomenological experience as it unfolds. Every element of it is adaptive, flexible. We don't know what's going to happen. Being subjective or gathering in a subjective and contextual way allows for the depth of data to be there and for creative inquiry and meaning making. Highs and lows. So why did I call it highs and lows? I met a group of boys, two groups that were remarkably different in language, behaviour, energy, movement, sound and focus. The same session plan was presented to both, exactly the same time, but flexibility and modification were mandatory at every single session. A significant difference was the energy in the two groups. The boys were escalated, they were wired, they were up here, they couldn't stand in a circle. They couldn't... can somebody let me know when we're 15 minutes? Anyone? Can anyone time me? I forgot that. Thank you. Sorry? Left. I better hurry up. Okay, so boys are up here, girls are down here. And what's the aim is to get those boys down and get those girls up. Boys. These are my images. We're not looking at the images to analyse them. Boys couldn't stand still, shifting and moving, making it difficult to even start activities. They are highly dysregulated, needed support to lower their energy pace and bodies in space. The girls presented with low energy, tired, laconic, hungry, low, stressed, bored, unhappy or worried. The girls were low mood and affect and needed support to increase their energy and vitality to embody the space. So, just a couple of snapshots. These are some of the stories, moments. Finding a space in the room. So I've asked the girls to walk around the room and then to find themselves a safe space. For some, that was under a table, somebody's behind a pillar, but fairly equidistant around the wall. Nobody next to another, but they were all touching the wall in some way, creating some boundary or support. I gave them two A4 sheets of paper and invited them to trace their feet where they were standing. These were kept for later, for a further session down the track to look at journey. The boys, well, Murphy's Law, session 1, with a highly escalated group of boys, a lockdown practice was scheduled by the school. The alarm goes off and everybody dives under the desks. Now, as the boys knew it was coming, they'd shared the information, so they were well prepared, but gee, they reacted so quickly. They were down under those desks, as I would expect hyper-aroused bodies to do. The opportunity presents itself to try the finding a safe space in the room activity with this group of escalated boys. So while they're practicing being safe under the tables, I hand them one sheet of paper. They don't get a choice of colour, and they're invited to trace their feet. So yeah, that was a huge moderation of the activity. I'll go forward. The foot traces afterwards were used to create a line of stepping stones across the room. Now, I made this up as I went along, because out they came and what were we going to do next? So by using those footsteps across the room, the boys got into a formation which they hadn't actually been able to do to date. They couldn't even stand in a circle. So then they started crossing the steps as if it was a bridge. The ground then turned to water, and they had to use those stepping stones to cross the river. By the third round, I've invited the boys to buddy up and to help each other across those stepping stones and across the river. They engaged in that so well, and I was really, really surprised that to see these lovely moments of working together and trusting to get across this. They also took on the creative, the imaginative variation really, really well. You can read that later. Let's see, we'll go. We'll miss past the face. You can read that in your own time. Hot lava, moving around the room, readiness. So boys are very enthusiastic at this stage, but the game has to be reduced and modified because, again, they're still really highly aroused. The pace. So once they're in movement, the pace, I can change it to and vary it to slow, fast, sticky, wet, and lava. And the boys react accordingly, jumping into that here and now and playing in that imagined space. Then I've used the vertical levels in the room to bring the boys down to floor position, to a grounding opportunity, and then gone on to some, progressive muscle relaxation. And try to get them really vertical. I'll jump in ahead to another story with the boys. This went on for over the first couple of weeks, first few sessions. they were still quite dysregulated, and I was racking my brain, how do I bring a group of highly escalated boys down? Number one, I brought cushions and placed cushions around the room in a circle. There were boys who couldn't sit in a circle. One would stand here, begin the circle and move, and then everybody else would move. So cushions gave them a place to sit, and they were able to actually own that. And then came the socks. I brought socks for them. So I wanted them to be able to feel the floor. And I had tried the previous week to get them to take their shoes off. 13-year-old boys taking their shoes off. Some have socks, some don't have socks, some have had the same socks for a week. So I brought socks along and they just melted, just feeling the socks, putting the socks on, and as you put the socks on, you get a little self-massage on the foot. They're on their cushions and they're snuggling down. All those bodies are de-escalating. And then I said to them, now, the socks, you have to give them back to me at the end of the session. I'll take them home and wash them so they'll be hidden in there. Miss, you can't wash our socks. No. It's a nice moment for us. The girls, on the other hand, I had to bring them up. And across the weeks with them, we learnt together that if I'm lethargic and lying down in my bed, what can I do? We could try it out, like come in on check-in, round the circle. How are you feeling? Hungry, tired, bored, stressed, worried? Da, da, da. Okay, let's get up. We do some games. Check in again, 5-10 minutes later. How are you feeling? Good, good. Yeah, good. I'm feeling good. Forgotten about what was before, yes. But after, say, 5 sessions, I could lie myself on the ground and go, I just don't feel like doing anything today. I'm feeling really horrible. I had bad night's sleep. Da, da, da. What should I do? And they could all tell me what to do. We also, I'll have to snapshot quite quickly, but across the 8 weeks, we learned, the 2 groups learned emotional literacy, and they could describe how they felt. In discussion with them, is that best if I say that? Do we just talk about words? Or should I bring a list? Bring a list. Reading English better than hearing it. Okay, so the girls could add to that list. What's missing? Is there something else that you know about that should be there? The boys could actually articulate some of that list, and that was good. I'll move on to just a couple of the games we did. Okay, a couple of highlights. So this is fairly early on with the boys group. Grandfather's keys. Freeze. Does anyone know that game? Yeah? So I'm at the front, I put something down here. Everybody lines up behind me. When my back's turned, they've got to creep forward. And then they have to freeze when I turn around. And if I see them move, they have to go back to the beginning. So fabulous game for young people who are highly escalated, because they've got to stop, start, bringing that nervous system up and down and getting it, tuning it almost. And another great one alongside that was slow motion races, where the winner is the last one to the line. So they have to actually slow their bodies right down. They're still in movement, but we've slowed it right down. I divided them into 2 groups. Half were audience and a cheer squad, and the other half raced. So that was fabulous. The audience played their part really well. And they got the notion of that slowing down. So I guess this is the tone of it through the program, where consistently I'm looking at those nervous systems and how I bring those boys from high to low, and how I bring those girls from low to high. Main mission, but we'll go right to the end now, because it's the end. Okay, there are a couple of delightful ones. I'll do Brave Warriors. This is fairly on, a long way into the program. I have a music therapist come along and worked with the groups to do some percussion, body percussion, and then we've gone into some yoga poses, the warrior pose, with the idea that the young people then each think about their own strengths and perhaps name up a time they were brave. I suppose I should have seen it coming, but we were fine at that point, and then going around the girls' circle, the young Syrian girl told us about her. She was brave the day that she survived walking out their bombed house, and her mother didn't survive that. But she went and did her exams the next day. And this was her drive that she had brought with her, constantly worried about going to exams and meeting those marks and getting her English right and getting into high school and getting work. But this is where the drive began, right when her mother passed. A very strong connection to that. Of course, she was asked to stay back afterwards. The whole group was checked in on, and there was care for her to make sure that she was okay, telling her story that way. And then, of course, she was continued under the care of the social worker from there. Okay. So, run through outcomes. The state of the body. The girls getting up, the boys slowing down. Co-regulation. Forming a group, co-regulation, and then self-regulation. Articulation and communication. Emotional literacy. Community and connection, strength and support, and building friendship and trust in those two groups. Mood and affect changed. Empathy and trust built. Cooperation and self-control. That's the socks. I've called it a chapter end because there's more. Not now, another time. I just want to mention what I've done with that, because I don't actually continue to work with groups, I work with individuals. But I've taken a lot of what I learned here into individual work. What I do with a highly escalated young client, what do I do with somebody with low affect? What about when that moment, you're just about to close your session when somebody says, oh, and then there was, and they reveal something very sad, and I can't let them go out the door like that, so how do I bring them back up in that moment? So there's some of the gems that I keep with me and just part and parcel of my multimodal practice.